The Boston Celtics face the New York Knicks for the fourth time this season. They're up 3-0 on the series. Can they make it a sweep? We're going to discuss now on Green with Envy. What's up, everybody? I'm joined by ESPN's Monica McNutt. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. Perfect. Thanks,
did.
Adam.
How did you find the intro? I always make a joke about it because it's super dramatic.
I had to tap for sound, and then I was like, "Oh, that's the drama."
Yeah, it's the I always it's got to be top 3 drama intro ever, because it's like, man, we're gonna get some really good stuff, and then you're just stuck with me and whoever was with me at the time. It's a bit anticlimactic. So you're in New York. You cover. I'm assuming you came up covering the Knicks before you ended up moving over to ESPN. Are you a big Knicks fan? Are you more Brooklyn? Where'd you lie?
So I grew up in DC. I actually still cover the Knicks. I'm their radio analyst and contribute to pre and post game. So I'm fortunate to be able to split my allegiance career-wise. New York's been great to me. Obviously, the Knicks are hot. That's a lot of fun. And then, of course, with ESPN, I get to cover the league at large.
So let's jump into the Knicks. So obviously, the Knicks are hot. They move on. They make a trade for OG Anunoby. They then go on a run. OG just seems like the perfect fit in Tom Thibodeau's system. Kind of an upgrade in terms of you move on from RJ, and what you get back is everything you hoped RJ would eventually become, right? Just a really gritty defensive wing, can score, can plug holes on both sides of the floor. You then move for Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic. Then all of a sudden you've got Anunoby's out, hopefully back by the end of the season. Randall's out for a hot minute. We know Mitchell Robinson's out. Whether he returns this season, still kind of would he, won't he? It's that Ross and Rachel effect. Being in New York, I had to throw that in. So coming from where we're at now, coming into this game, obviously I've got the Knicks as a potential Eastern Conference finalist, depending on how the playoffs break for them seeding-wise. But coming into this game, how are you feeling going up against Boston, and where do you see the Knicks' kind of chances of actually making an impact?
Well, honestly, Adam, I go back to the game at the beginning of the season, and that obviously was a different iteration of this New York Knicks squad. I want to say that had to be the first week of the season that Boston came here, and I was very impressed with Boston. They've been impressive. They are top of the Eastern Conference standings for good reason. But I do remember the Knicks making a push late in that ball game. And more times than not, some of my favorite moments as a part of the Knicks broadcast have been against Boston. For whatever reason, the Knicks gear up. They seem to play well against Boston. Coming into this one, I do think that you think about the asterisk of Knicks injuries a little bit more than you did previously in the season. You still aren't going to see what these teams look like competing against one another healthy, as Julius Randle is still navigating that injury, OG Anunoby, all the guys that you just rattled off. But I do think it's going to be a really good opportunity for the guys like Precious Achiuwa, Josh Hart, Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, this iteration of the Knicks is still very much finding itself. And so immediately, I think to the depth that they have, I think to the force that they can apply, both offensively and defensively. And of course, Jalen Brunson continues to add to his all-star year.
Brunson's been exceptional. I feel like he's the ideal ball handler when you're going up against drop defense, just because of that mid-range game. He's got that floater that he likes to get off on. And then you've got Precious, as you say. I think one matchup that I'm kind of not expecting, but I'm hopeful for, is like a Precious versus Tillman kind of matchup. Both physical, both like to kind of play a bit of defense. I think Precious is a bad matchup when you look against somebody like Luke Cornett or somebody like Kristaps, just because of the physicality and the force that he brings. So then you kind of start looking towards Al Horford, you look towards Tillman as potential counters there. Now, obviously, if Robinson was healthy, if Randall was healthy, that might change the way things look a bit more. Maybe you have to go double big to try and contain that physicality, because let's face it, the Knicks are built now to be just straight grit and grind kind of. They've taken a leaf out of Memphis's book. They look, on paper, they look fantastic. They all kind of fill that Tom Thibodeau situation, the way he likes to play. So that's kind of my biggest concern, is how do you control the glass? Because whoever controls the glass controls the tempo. And when you've got somebody like Brunson that can leak out, how do you feel about just being able to break down Boston in terms of transition because of how good they are defensively in the half court?
Well, I think you're right. It starts on the glass. And I think as much as we talk about starting on the glass when you think transition basketball, it's also taking good shots, right? So as much as the Knicks need to attempt to out-rebound the Boston Celtics, which I think that's going to be a fun battle to watch, they also have to take quality shots on their side, because then you have a higher chance of making the shots and you can get back and defend. To me, when I look at Boston, obviously Kristaps Porzingis is like the key cog. How healthy is he going to be? What kind of differences and mismatches does he create? But Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, you go down the roster, Drew Holiday, like all of these guys have the ability to get off and push in transition. So to me, I think the first thing for the Knicks is going to be their shot selection. And what we have seen as of late, they just beat Philly on Thursday night, is teams sending doubles to Jaylen. I think it goes back to, that wasn't Christmas because we were past Christmas. They beat the Bucks on Christmas. But that Lakers game, I think that was one of the first games without Julius. You really saw the Lakers sit on Jalen Brunson and be like, all right, the rest of y'all beat us, right? And so now with a little bit more practice and a little bit more opportunity, it is going to be imperative. When you look at that starting lineup, Dante DiVincenzo for the Knicks is shooting close to 42% from three. He's been lights out. Josh Hart is coming off of a really good game offensively in terms of holding defenses accountable and looking at the basket. Then you think about Precious, obviously, the activity that he creates. But it is going to be imperative that the Knicks move the ball crisply and make themselves available if Boston does decide to send multiple bodies toward Jalen. Now, they may not need to do that. You've got three very stout defenders in your starting lineup. They may decide not to do that. But it's going to be a physical day for Jalen for sure.
And that's where Bojan comes into it as well, right? With Bogdanovic, because you've now got against the Lakers, you didn't have that other elite scorer, whereas now you can put Bojan on the other side of the floor, start stretching teams out with the shooting ability, and now Jalen all of a sudden has somebody that if he does draw to, he can rely on them to kind of create off the dribble or score off the catch. So I think that was such an underrated pickup for the Knicks in terms of just when there are injuries, as long as him and Jalen are both on the floor together, you actually have some form of an outlet that forces teams that, hey, if we double, we know that we might get caught out if Jalen can get the pass over the top. Obviously, that's where we come down to that size discussion, which I don't really buy. Like the Celtics went to the conference finals with Isaiah Thomas as their starting guard. If the Celtics can do it, well, you know what I mean? Like
I appreciate that, Adam, because that noise has gotten so loud when it comes to Jalen. But continue.
But it's true though, right? I mean, IT finished 5th in MVP voting during that season. I think it was 2016, 2017, around that time. If he can do it and everyone got behind that, then you have to kind of get behind Jalen and let him stand on what he's doing in terms of his production. But if you can throw two bigger defenders at him and then kind of force him to make those reads over the top, it does become a little bit more problematic without having just the ability to read what's going on behind that defensive line, right? So I think that the Knicks are going to have that issue just because of the size that Boston bring to the equation.
Yeah, and I think this season, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, forgive me, Adam, but the Knicks have obviously made a much more concerted effort to get some of those easy baskets in transition, right? And as much as we're talking about size, one of the things that was really fun to watch, and I know they will be without OG in this matchup, but was sort of this front court evolution of passers. I think Isaiah Hartenstein is a great passer, and we're starting to see more and more of that for the Knicks. And granted, he may still be dealing with some minutes restriction, dealing with that tendinopathy in his Achilles. It is I won't say long run as we're now past All-Star break, but they are very cautious with him. So I'm not sure how much he'll be available. But Isaiah and Precious, I'll throw Josh in. Originally, I would say OG Anunoby because I think it kind of started when he got there. But those three guys have the ability to move the basketball sort of in shorter windows. And so I think that also, if their cuts are timed properly, all of that will be available to Jalen. Versus Philly, he didn't have the best offensive game, but he did still manage a double-double between free throws and assists. And so his ability to keep defenders off balance is something that I just don't believe he gets enough credit for. Yes, he is certainly the centerpiece of this New York Knicks squad, and this team knows they have to have his back.
You mentioned Hartenstein, and I have to get it out there. Just one for self-promo, and two just because I want your take. So I do a newsletter, the Celtics Chronicle. The link's in the description, everybody. I referred to Hartenstein today as the Severus Snape of the Knicks, right? Like the master of the dark arts. Like sometimes I feel like he can get a little bit chippy out there. He can get a little bit over physical, but within the confines of it still being competitive and not being kind of that one step too far. And he gave the Celtics some issues before. I actually think he's a really good backup guard when he was available. just before the Knicks picked him up. He was kind of somebody that I was like, the Celtics need to take a long look at this guy. So he is someone I think can actually make a difference in terms of just bringing that physicality. As you said, he's a good passer. He's a great screener. Gives Jalen kind of that extra stability in knowing that there's going to be a big body that's when you run into that screen, it's going to create the separation you need to make that next read. And obviously, as you said, he may not be completely available for this game. So who do you go to behind? Because if I'm correct, Hartenstein's been starting for you at the 5, right? Since
He was,
Mitchell's been at. So that puts Precious up. So who takes that backup spot once Precious kind of steps up?
The last game, who started the last game? Did they start and come out? I can't remember who started the last game, but I do know Jericho Sims has gotten some of those minutes. Precious gets some of those minutes at the 5, and Josh moves to the 4 as well. So it's sort of this conglomerate piece by piece filling in for the absence of Mitchell Robinson / Isaiah Hartenstein. So we've seen a glimpse now, due to injuries, of some of these smaller Knicks lineups. And again, we go back to the point about transition and the pace of this ball game. What I think should not be misconstrued when you see a Knicks smaller lineup is you still have guys that are notable rebounders. Josh Hart, I think, is in the top of his class in terms of guys 6'5", or I think it's 6'6", or shorter in terms of rebounds per game. Precious Achiuwa, while he is a little bit undersized at that position, his rebounding and his energy is absolutely undeniable. Bogdanovich and Burks, like, these are two veterans who give you solid size, the ability to rebound, the ability to hold their guy long enough for the help to rotate if necessary. And so it's going to be interesting. Adam, it's weird because there is so much optimism. There is an abundance of optimism about this team, but health right now feels like it is an asterisk the size of the state, quite frankly.
As a Celtics fan and having that, like, the hospital Celtics kind of era, like, I feel for you because we've been through this from like the Celtics standpoint of you have all the talent in the world. You feel like the coaching's on point. You feel like the pieces all fit together well. Everything kind of on paper makes great sense, right? And then all of a sudden, no one can get healthy. And you're relying on two-way guys, 10-day guys, just to kind of make up the back end of that rotation. And you're like, is this going to work when we get to the postseason? Not only just because of the injuries that are there and the chance that they kind of re-injure or re-aggravate whatever they've been dealing with, but also because you need that continuity, you need that familiarity. There's multiple new faces in New York right now that realistically could benefit from being healthy together and
absolutely.
And I'll kind of view this as next season is the season to watch New York in terms of just being able to piece everything together. This season is, hey, we came into the season as like a second round ceiling. Now it's a second round floor. So your expectations have flipped, and that's a win in itself. And then it's kind of, as Giannis would put it, it's steps to success, right? That's kind of where the Celtics have already walked these steps. Like for Boston, it's championship or bust, because you've done these. Hey, we had a second round ceiling, then it's a second round floor. Now it's a conference finals ceiling. Now it's a conference finals floor. They've kind of walked that mile already. And it feels like the Knicks, and I'm happy for this because, you know, in my opinion, New York, Boston should be a huge rivalry. They're two of the biggest teams in the East. Rabid fan bases. They're very close in proximity to each other. They should be hating each other more consistently than what they are. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm with you.
I'm all here for it, but at the same time, I'm not expecting it to be this season, although I would like to kind of have a series against the Knicks this year.
You are right, Adam. And I will say, frankly, I don't love the idea of a Boston series, particularly in the first round, which it would be second round with the play-ins, the way things go. Two things to what you said there. You are right about it taking a little bit of time. And I have been one to admonish us as an NBA collective and fans and consumers. Like, the last time we saw Add Star, Add Water championship was 2019 Raptors. And we should not miss out on how much of an outlier that is. But similarly, when I look at these two teams that we're talking about tonight, you didn't add centerpiece guys. And so I think that is a different conversation, especially in Boston, where your core has been together. I mean, I'll just give you the two guys. The two stars have been together. And as you mentioned, have had all of this runway and this playoff experience. And you only added a guy that already won a chip and a guy who's one of the more versatile physical body types to have to guard in the league, right? As in terms of your premier ads. There are other ads I know of. But I do think that when we say this, we've seen it through sports. And I don't have to tell you, you just went through your Celtics experience with injuries. It's so fickle to say next season. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Windows close.
it's so delicate. And so for me, in a perfect world, the Knicks are able to clear all these injuries with 2.5 weeks going into the postseason. They're able to find their mojo. And the flip side of the injury coin is a guy like Julius Randle, who has the ability to draw two, so that Jalen can't also draw two, because teams have to then pick their poison, has had the opportunity to rest, and he's fresh and ready to go. Now, that might be idealistic, but I really want to see this team this year, if at all possible. You throw Julius in there, Mitchell Robinson gets back. I don't even need Mitchell Robinson necessarily at those starter numbers, because Isaiah Hartenstein has emerged. But if he's back and can give you a strong 15, I mean, what could happen?
Who are you taking as the favorites in the East right now? Like, are you on that Boston is the best team, and then everybody else is kind of fighting for a chance to at least get in the ring with them? Are we talking like who's a Boston that Ivan Drago in this story, except Ivan Drago wins? Like, how are we looking at this?
Did you say Ivan Drago like Creed?
Yeah.
That's funny. I wasn't expecting that. Yeah, I think Boston is the top of the class. I remember, and this was probably by December for me, somebody had asked me, who's the best team you've seen in person? And it was far and away Boston, especially when Porzingis is healthy. I will say, and I've seen the Clippers in person 3 times now, that margin is closing for me when the Clippers are healthy. They are also playing with a level of force on both sides of the ball. It's a combination of force and poise. Because I'm actually not a person who's out on the young teams. I buy that Minnesota and OKC are prepared to do some damage. Now, do I necessarily see either of them going to the conference finals? I'm not sure. But there is a maturity about the Clippers that I don't know. Yeah, like they're veterans. Like, it's time. It's go time. And then with Boston, same concept, just a little younger overall, right? Like, I know some Celtics fans was on my head about the MVP conversation. I am not saying that Jason Tatum should not be in the MVP conversation. But if you look at the numbers, if you trust Vegas, and I don't have a vote, but I know folks that have a vote, I do think that there is some logic to people now looking at this behemoth of a squad and the talent, and whether you pin it on Porzingis, Holiday, or Brown, like, Jason probably isn't getting maybe the credit that he deserves in that conversation because of the pieces that are around him.
Yeah, my argument's been contextualizing things rather than looking at just the production. You need to look at what he's doing in terms of playmaking, rebounding, defending, plugging gaps, movement, creating via movement is one of the most underrated aspects of pretty much any offensive player's game, not just Jason Tatum. And then how everybody else around him is thriving right now. So you go and look at Luka, and he's putting up these great numbers offensively.
It doesn't translate though.
Struggling defense, it's not translating to wins, and people around him, they aren't thriving the same way. Like, a big man's always going to thrive next to Luka just because of the passing ability and the role threat, but there's not much generating elsewhere. Whereas with Tatum, everyone's around him. Everyone who's around him is getting their touches. He's not taking away from them. In fact, he's building them up. He's kind of lifting everybody. So that to me puts him in the MVP conversation. I'm not going to sit here and say he should win, because quite frankly, I'm more concerned about can the Celtics win a chip than can someone win MVP. But I definitely think he belongs within that conversation. And I understand people that don't think that way. But for me, the context matters more than the box scores or the numbers.
So I'm with you, Adam, and 100% should be in the conversation. And you can make the case, and I'd be like, you have a great case that he should win. But I would, even with your contextualization, we could probably just pull up Vegas numbers real quick. Last check, I think SGA and Nikola Jokic are the leaders in the clubhouse in the same thing. And even for smart basketball folks like you and I, right? Like, you could look at their numbers in the context of what they're able to do is very similar. So then now, right, people are then looking like, okay, well, look at the roster around them. I think Jalen Williams in OKC is going to be phenomenal in this league for a really long time. But he's still under the radar, still not a mainstream name, right? Denver, Jamal Murray, and then most folks start guessing, right? Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, MPJ on a good day, right? So I'm with you in terms of their overall impact. And I think he should absolutely climb those standings. It would not shock me if something magical happened down the stretch and he was able to win it. And we're not talking about a vast group of guys who I think are serious contenders for that. He should be in it. But it's that weird thing where like nobody's really talking about Kawhi, who's doing the same thing because of all the talent that's surrounding him.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Like everybody's talking about. I kind of call it the sexy names. Everybody, the
Yep.
name. If you go on Instagram and you start scrolling like through NBA Instagram, it's the same few names. It's the Lucas, it's the Jokic's because it's the Giannis. Giannis shouldn't be in it. Giannis got his coach fired. His teams that just towards the back end, they're struggling everywhere. Like, sorry, Giannis is not that year, but he has the sexy name, so everyone's like Giannis is going to be in that discussion. So I do understand, and that's part of why I think that the MVP voting process needs to have a little bit more like transparency in what people voted for. Maybe there should be an explainer of why your votes got given. You know, you're in this really privileged position to be able to vote and impact somebody's potential earning potential moving forward.
Yeah.
That there should even just like I voted for this guy because XYZ, even if it's a tick box, just to add that bit of transparency so we can get past this. So, he has the best highlights. Do you know what I mean?
Look, so while I'm with you on transparency, I have also had my fair share of running with fan bases that are a little bit I'm reminded that fan is short for fanatic. And so just
there's the like Celtics being one of them.
Listen, the Celtics have come at me a time or two. I've definitely gotten the crosshairs of Warriors fans. Like, it's fine. It's occupational hazard. While I'm with you, I also am like, I don't know if you would want to invite all that. And like I said, I'm not a voter. I don't think that I'm interested in becoming a voter. To your point, like, I don't want to be responsible for or be a contributing factor, not solely responsible for the type of money guys make. And it's hard, Adam. Like, it's hard.
What, voting is hard? Sorry, I'm looking at the chat at the same time. Voting is hard. I wouldn't be able to do it. One, because I'm just like, at some point, whether you don't want to allow it to or not, bias creeps in. Everybody has a style of play that they kind of resonate with. Everybody, like, I grew up in the 90s. I like big physical bigs. I like explosive wings that can dunk. That's the way I grew up. Like, some people prefer the finesse of things, right? Like Franz Wagner might come through in about 10 years and just be another sexy name just because of the finesse around the rim and the Stephs of the world. So then your bias subconsciously has to play a part because you're human. So you're like, man, this is how I view the game should be played. Embiid should get it. Embiid's played 5 games this year. It doesn't matter. Embiid should be MVP. You know what I mean? So that's too difficult.
Listen, at some point, ChatGPT will be deciding our MVP awards. Don't worry.
Decides most of my life as it is. I'm not even gonna lie. So let's get back to this game. I want to find out who are you scared of most in Boston? Like, I know that everyone's gonna choose Tatum. If we take Tatum out of the equation and just assume he's gonna have a great game or at least a high level game, which matchup are you most concerned about from them on?
It's KP, and forgive me, Adam, I'm not 100% up on it. He's healthy, right?
Yeah, he should be healthy.
Yeah, he should be available. Report. It's KP for me. Like, especially when they were here, the first game that stands out in my memory the most. Mitch did as good a job as he could, right? But I remember late when the Knicks were making that push. I want to say they got it to 6. It might have been 5. But it was a decision to double KP late, and he made the right pass. That was like, there goes that window, right? And so for me, again, the unicorn, and obviously Knicks fans are familiar with him early in his career here in New York. He's just a mismatch problem, a matchup problem, whichever language you want to use. And I'm a fan of his game. He lets it come easy. He can score at all 3 levels. He can stretch the floor. Like, he's kind of the dream of the current NBA at that position, minus maybe you might want to bulk him up just a little bit to make him the true dream.
And how does it feel knowing that he's playing for somebody, he's right up the road, and he's probably going to be in the NBA Finals this year? And obviously everything that happened with the Knicks and the way it ended, obviously you had that FU Porzingis chant to begin the season, which was fun, right? I was all about it. I thought that was fun. But how does that feel, like, from a Knicks fan perspective, being like, man, the missing piece to the Celtics potentially winning another chip was the guy that it just didn't work out with here?
So I'll be honest, I was not here when KP was here. I think I got here right after he left. As a part of the broadcast team at MSG Networks. I don't feel no type of way. And I have a hard time doing the revisionist history thing because I think each step ultimately moved the Knicks to where they are, where they have a front office and they got the roster they currently have. And a huge compliment this season, whether people wanted to agree or not, is this idea that all you need is one more piece, and they are a destination for a guy that wants the opportunity to contend and have maybe one of the biggest brands in the league, because you just can't beat New York, really. So I'm not like, I just think that's the way things shake out. Because there's no in my mind, Adam, too, it comes down to, is Jalen Brunson here or not?
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? And you could argue if it works out with Porzingis, whatever, I don't know. But this team, to me, Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, if you can keep more of that core intact than not, like, I think you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I think that the Knicks are well set up. You still have a lot of draft picks left, if I remember correctly, as well. You don't have as many young talents to kind of throw at a superstar now, kind of move the few of them. But you still got enough pieces to go and pick up a Karl Anthony Towns or somebody along that, like, you know, whoever they're being rumored with. It's usually Cat. At every turn, it's usually Cat. But then, I don't know why. There was another name that you always used to be rumored with as well. I can't remember who that was. Oh, Donovan Mitchell.
Oh, yeah, I have long moved on from that one, Adam. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. But you still have the pieces to make either of those happen. It just means giving up somebody that's more of a core guy than a developmental piece. The Knicks worry me a lot. They do. Would you rather Donovan Mitchell or would you rather Karl Anthony Towns?
I love Don. He's incredible. But I don't want your starting guards to get any smaller. So I'm out on Don. I think he's having a tremendous year in Cleveland. I can't decide how I feel about them once the postseason hits, but they're doing something special. I just had them in Philly last night, although they lost to the Sixers. Again, Cat is of the class of a Porzingis, big, that can stretch, that can hit the three, that can defend. So of the two of those, that's certainly where my pendulum would swing.
I think my biggest thing is I don't know how you make it work defensively, especially in a Thibodeau team with Brunson and Mitchell as your backcourt.
Correct.
I don't know how it works.
I'm gonna tell you, it doesn't. So I'm with you.
I've got a question here on the chat. It's been very respectfully asked, so I thought I'd make sure it gets asked. From Jared Zero, is a good guy, very big on Celtics Twitter. We've already discussed injuries. We've already discussed people stepping up. But which player in the Knicks rotation has exceeded your expectations?
Precious Achiuwa, easily. Okay, so that's since the trade deadline. But I'm actually going to go to Isaiah as well. The way that he's been able to step in and hold the line for Mitch. Like, Mitch was a force defensively. I may have this not 100% correct, but easily one of the top offensive rebounders in the league. He had worked so hard, y'all, on his body this offseason. He punted on trying to block shots and had opted to play position, and it was yielding results. Like, my running joke with Mitch was always, yo, dude, you gonna stay off the floor? Like, it's a long way down from 7 feet when he used to hit the ground. And he was doing that. He was playing with so much balance, and so it was really deflating for him to get injured. Then you get Isaiah, who emerges very similar to Mitch. Like, neither one of them are your offensive juggernauts, but can play pick and roll, is going to rebound, doesn't mind being physical. As long as he stays out of foul trouble within the first 5 minutes of a ball game, you're usually in good shape when it comes to Zay. And so he has not only held the line, but he said to me that he's taken pride in it because Mitch is his boy. The two of them are actually pretty close. And so there was an additional responsibility there for him. So Zay has been really, really impressive in terms of his ability to step up. And then Precious, like, I think when the trade first went down, a lot of folks were kind of like, okay, cool, whatever. You toss Precious in. Depending on who you talk to on the Toronto side, upside versus ceiling being already met, like, it just really depended on who you talk to. And so there were lots of mixed reviews. But the runway that Tibbs has given Precious, the opportunity for Precious just to move off the ball. I said this the other day. He is not a Villanova Wildcat, but he has kind of fit seamlessly with the Nova Knicks in terms of how he plays off the ball and makes himself available to those guys. So those are the two for me.
I kind of want to ask this now just because I feel like it's going to happen and I don't know when. When are you going on the Roommates podcast with Josh and Jada?
You know, I'm gonna let them do their thing for a little bit. The invitation probably is out there, but Adam, is funny. Listening to those guys, I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, not quite a full decade older than them, but there's a little bit of an age difference there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at that point now where I'm seeing people talk about like the music they're listening to in the locker room and stuff, and I'm like, dude, that's trash, man. Like, what?
I'm like, oh, guys, you guys are babies. Okay, great. Love that for y'all.
I mean, you still be on the podcast, though. I mean, podcasting is like a younger generation thing anyway.
For sure. And you're right. And like, I think the podcast has been a lot of fun. And I do hope to get an invitation at some point. But I'm not going to lie. When they first got it going, I was like, oh, age gap. Okay.
You just need to avoid any like pop culture references and whatever they were doing during their college time. Just let them talk about it just at death.
And to Adam, the other part for me is like, I'm a Georgetown girl. Like, I remember actively rooting against both of them and also being very pissed that Josh got to Villanova and didn't end up at Georgetown because we're from the same area in the DC area. So, yeah, it'll be a lot of fun when we finally make that happen.
2 more things and then I'll let you get out of here. So you grew up in DC. I can understand why you wouldn't cover the Wizards because nobody wants to cover the Wizards by choice. But why the Knicks?
So, funny story. I would have loved an opportunity to cover the Wizards. For whatever reason, I just wasn't their girl. The Knicks actually happened. When did we hit the pandemic? 2020. So 2018, I think. I was actually doing a project with Overtime here in New York. Their headquarters are in Brooklyn. And we were doing a simulcast of Knicks Lakers and doing an Overtime broadcast to go alongside the traditional MSG broadcast. And we had a blast. It actually ended up being a block shot on LeBron James and the Knicks won. And gosh, I'm blanking on the dude that actually blocked the shot. He's one of the European NBA players that was here for the Knicks. Oh, I'm so mad I can't call his name right now. But that was my first foray to MSG Networks and Knicks basketball. And after that, Adam, and you mentioned it, like the freelance, you know how it is in our industry. At the time, I didn't have a full-time thing. And so I just sent a follow-up email and was like, yo, like, I enjoyed that project with you guys. Please keep me in mind for future things. And we started to build a relationship from there. So it's truly just kind of been where the ball has taken me and the career opportunities have been.
That's dope though, because it gets you into a huge market, opens up the eyes. You end up with ESPN, you're on First Take with arguably the most famous Knicks fan in the world in Stephen A. Who I've got to admit, his new podcast, like the Stephen A Show, is like changing everyone's opinion, right?
Bro, again, not everything you think needs to be said, but it's fine. Do your thing, SA.
It's the tweet replies for me, right? Where you get some fun and it's just some wild shit.
I don't want to look at you after you sharing this information. I don't need to know some of that.
Okay, final question before I get anybody in trouble. Prediction for tonight's game: score, highest scoring player, anything you want to go with. You can take it in any direction you feel comfortable with.
Of course, I'm gonna pick my Knicks. Adam, you holding it down for the Celtics. I will tell you this: if the Knicks can dominate the glass. All right, let's go all the way to the weeds. What's dominate, though? I think they out-rebounded Philly by 10 the other day. They're going to need a double-digit margin on the glass. They're going to need the Celtics to fall in love with the three-point line and it not be so efficient. I think if you get a double-double out of Precious, Jalen is back to his efficient scoring, gives you a 50%, 55% night, and can get to the free throw line. Who's going to have an outburst for the Knicks, though, to combat what y'all got going on? Let's go with Bogdanović keeping the hot streak going. I think he was 6 of 7 from 3 on Thursday. I know he was 5 of 5 in the second quarter. So formulaically, the Knicks win if they're plus double digits on the glass. You get two guys pull off a double-double type performance. And out of your bench, you're going to need at least 30. And so I'm going to put half of that on Bogdanović. That's the formula for me in terms of the Knicks winning. And you hope the Celtics fall in love a little bit with the three-point line.
So you need a Wizard of Oz level performance.
I just think that there's some real focus that the Celtics have that they should be credited for. And I think the Knicks injuries tonight, you might feel that.
That's the biggest factor, right? Like, that, again, going back to context, you need to contextualize the fact that you're missing 3 starting level guys.
Yep. Like, and even if you could give me OG, like I think you because he's your best defender, right? But without someone who's going to draw 2, it's going to be a long night for Jalen.
And that's going to be the issue, right? And that's why Bogdanović needs to come out scoring early, just so you take that need to send doubles elsewhere. So you can figure it all out. With that being said, we're going to let you out of here. Before you go, obviously people know where to find you, but again, just plug anything you got going on.
Just at McNutt Monaco on socials. I'm trying to do this thing on Threads a little more, Adam.
I'm there with you. I'm there with you. But it's like talking to the wall, right? Like it's just
a little
dead out
bit.
there.
It's a little bit. We're trying to get it going though. I think it's coming. I don't really have anywhere to follow. I would just like to admonish all of us that consume the NBA. It's never personal. Just remember that. When you hear a take that you may or may not like, it's never personal. It's just never personal. We're all part
And
of
if
the
everyone
ecosystem.
agreed, no one would tune into anything because it'd be like, well, there's no controversy. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
saying you have to, you know what I mean? Everyone's meant to disagree. Like, people aren't meant to all agree.
And listen, like last year during the Warriors Kings series, I found a few folks that were cool on Twitter and we were totally on different sides. And I don't mind engaging. I don't mind disagreeing. It's when it gets a little nasty and unnecessary that I'm like, all right, whatever. So yeah, it's never personal. Let's do it. Let's enjoy it. Let's be cool about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for jumping in here with me. Everybody that's paid attention all the way through, appreciate you. If you're watching after this has been live, then again, appreciate you all coming through and enjoy the game. Monica, hopefully we can do this again in the playoffs, preferably in a conference finals.
Oh, I like the sound of that, Adam. Thanks for having me.